Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. The stars shone brightly in the void of space, distant and indifferent. The colony ship Prometheus glided through the dark expanse of the galaxy, its crew on their way to a newly discovered world. No one had anticipated the trouble they would soon encounter, not even the seasoned Captain Eva March. But trouble was just around the corner. Lieutenant Michael Hawke had always thought of himself as a man of the stars, a soldier with his eyes set firmly on the future. He'd been part of the military for over a decade, stationed on various ships, dealing with the occasional skirmish, but nothing ever really prepared him for what happened that day. The alarms blared, cutting through the monotony of their hyperspace journey. It was as though the ship had been shaken awake from a deep slumber, and Michael instinctively moved to the nearest terminal. His fingers flew over the controls, calling up the source of the disturbance. "Captain, we have an unidentified vessel on a collision course," Michael reported, his voice steady despite the sudden rush of adrenaline. "Is it hostile?" Captain March's voice was calm, but there was a tension there, an edge that spoke of years of experience. She was no stranger to danger. "I don't know yet, Captain. The ship's signature is strange. It's unlike anything we've seen before." Just as Michael was about to suggest launching a probe, the ship shuddered violently, and a flash of light illuminated the starry expanse. The Prometheus veered to the side, the ship's hull groaning as its automated systems tried to correct their course. "Damn it! Brace for impact," March yelled, her voice sharp and commanding. The crew scrambled into their seats, securing their harnesses. Michael barely had time to react as the world seemed to twist and pull around him. The ship lurched again, this time with a bone-rattling jolt that sent him crashing against the side of the cockpit. His head slammed against the panel and the lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. When Michael came to, he felt disoriented, his body aching from the sudden, violent movements. He reached for his head, touching the blood that trickled down from a gash on his forehead. Shaking his head, he forced himself to his feet, the sounds of chaos and alarms still echoing in the background. "Report." Captain March's voice cut through the haze. "We've been hit," Michael responded, his voice low. "But we're intact. The damage isn't catastrophic." "Good. Everyone report to the airlock. We're going to investigate." Michael nodded, quickly making his way to the airlock. It was one of the few places where the crew could safely transfer to an external pod to investigate the situation. When he arrived, the crew was already gathering, armed and ready. The air was thick with tension as they prepared for whatever lay beyond. The outside of the ship looked strangely different. The collision had caused a breach, but it was something more than just the impact. The foreign ship, hovering ominously in space, seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. It was unlike any ship they'd encountered. No obvious engines, no obvious weapons. Just a massive, swirling mass of metal and energy. "Let's move out," March ordered. Michael followed her closely, stepping into the pod with the others. The airlock sealed and they shot off toward the mysterious vessel. The closer they got, the more surreal the scene became. It was a ship, but not like any the crew had ever seen. Its surface seemed to shift and change like a living organism. Strange symbols pulsed across its hull, glowing faintly. The whole structure felt like it was breathing. "We've never seen anything like this before," Lieutenant Hall said, his voice filled with awe. It's not even a ship. It's part of the void itself." "Stay focused," Captain March replied, her voice unwavering. "We need to figure out what this is and if it's a threat." As they docked with the strange vessel, Michael's heart pounded in his chest. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but there was no turning back now. They stepped onto the alien ship, the atmosphere cold and strange, like stepping into a forgotten temple. The walls were smooth, yet pulsed with an eerie light. Their footsteps echoed through the vast hallways as they moved deeper inside. It didn't take long for them to encounter their first living being. The alien woman stood frozen at the end of a long corridor, her body rigid, her eyes locked onto Michael. She was tall, her skin a translucent shade of blue, with intricate markings etched across her face. Long, silver hair cascaded down her back, flowing like liquid metal. Her eyes were wide, but there was no sign of aggression. In fact, there was something almost reverent in the way she looked at him. For a long moment, there was only silence. The crew members behind Michael shifted uneasily, but he couldn't take his eyes off the woman. There was something unsettling about her stillness, like she was caught between two worlds, or perhaps trapped in some strange, forgotten memory. Then, in a voice as delicate as wind over glass, she spoke. You are one of them, she said, her words slow and careful as though she were testing them on her tongue. You are a human? Michael blinked, confused. Yes, we are human. Who are you? What is this place? The alien woman did not respond immediately. Her gaze never wavered from his, as if studying him like a puzzle. And then, to Michael's astonishment, she dropped to her knees, her eyes filling with emotion, fear, awe, and something darker. You're him? Michael frowned. Him? What do you mean? The woman's voice shook as she spoke, her eyes wide with disbelief. The one. The lost one. The one they said would come to destroy us. The words hung in the air like a curse. Michael had no idea what she meant, but he knew that whatever this was, it was only the beginning. Something about him had caused her to freeze, and that one she spoke of, whatever it was, seemed tied to a destiny he couldn't yet understand. What had she seen in him? What was the real reason she had stopped in her tracks the moment their eyes met? The alien woman's words reverberated through Michael's mind like a distant echo, twisting the air around them with a growing sense of dread. The crew members behind him stood frozen, unsure of how to react to the strange woman's admission. Michael's pulse quickened. The last thing they needed was a full-blown confrontation with an unknown species. Captain March stepped forward, her tone firm and commanding. What do you mean, the one? Who are you? The alien's eyes flickered, shifting between the crew as if trying to gauge their reactions. She slowly rose to her feet, and her posture remained tense. You are human, but not just human. Her voice quivered, though her words remained deliberate. You are the last of them. Michael's confusion deepened, but there was something in the way she spoke, something about the weight of her words, that made his skin crawl. He glanced at his crew. Their faces were a mix of skepticism and concern. March, as always, kept her expression neutral, but Michael could tell she was grappling with the same questions he was. The alien continued. You are the destroyer, or perhaps the savior. It is not yet clear. Destroyer? Michael echoed, his voice rising with disbelief. Why would I be a destroyer? The woman's gaze locked onto him with an intensity that made his breath catch. The prophecy. She trailed off for a moment, looking almost lost in thought before continuing. We, the elders, believed it was a myth, a story to keep us in line. But you're here, and that means it is true. What prophecy? March asked, her voice calm but stern, demanding an answer. The alien woman hesitated for a moment before answering, her voice soft but heavy with the burden of her words. The prophecy speaks of the one who would come, the last of the humans. A human who would bring either destruction or salvation to our kind, depending on his choice. We, the children of the stars, were warned of your arrival, but we never believed it would be you. Michael could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. I don't understand, he said, shaking his head. I'm just a soldier. I'm not some destroyer. The alien took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. You are not just a soldier. You were chosen. You and your kind were the architects of our downfall long ago. Captain March stepped forward, her brow furrowed in concern. How can you say that? Humans have never interacted with your species before. The alien woman's expression hardened as she seemed to search for the right words. You do not remember. But we do. Long ago there was a war between your kind and ours. The humans destroyed our home, our way of life, with your weapons, your arrogance. It is said that after the devastation, there was a promise that a single human would return. One who would either redeem humanity's sins, or finish what had been started. Michael's heart pounded in his chest. A war? With your kind? I've never heard of it. The woman's eyes narrowed and she stepped back, a flash of something like pity in her gaze. Of course you haven't. The war was forgotten. Your species erased all traces of it. But we have not forgotten. We have waited for the one who would come and either destroy us or save us from the nightmare you created. Captain March was quiet for a moment, her sharp eyes flicking between Michael and the alien woman. So you think Michael is the one from your prophecy, the one who's supposed to destroy you? The alien woman's head tilted slightly, her expression torn. Not destroy us, finish what was started. Your kind's weapons caused the collapse of our civilization. But we survived, hidden in the shadows of space, waiting for the one who would bring judgment. It was meant to be you, but I see now, you are not the one we feared. Michael felt a strange sense of guilt wash over him, but at the same time, something didn't sit right. This isn't making sense, he said, his voice tight with confusion. If there was a war and if you were wiped out, why are you still here? The alien woman's eyes softened for the first time, her gaze filled with a strange sadness. We were not all destroyed, But those of us who survived are scattered across the galaxy, hiding from the legacy of our past. We, the elders, they feared this day would come. They feared you. Me? Why? Because you are the last of the humans, the progeny of those who caused our ruin. You are the only one who can decide whether we are to be eradicated completely or allowed to rebuild. Michael could feel the weight of her gaze bearing down on him, a strange pressure on his chest as if she were trying to peer into his very soul. The tension in the air was palpable, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. But I'm not here to destroy anything, he said firmly. I'm here to find out what happened to you and make sure my people don't make the same mistakes. The alien woman shook her head, her expression filled with disbelief. It is not that simple. You cannot simply undo what has been done. The prophecy has already begun and the path we walk, has already been decided. Captain March stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Enough of the cryptic nonsense. We need to know what you want from us. If we're not here to destroy you, then what? The alien woman's lips parted as if to speak, but then she stopped, her eyes suddenly flickering toward something behind Michael. Her entire posture stiffened, her face draining of color. For a moment, Michael thought he saw something, a flicker of light, a strange pulse from deep within the alien ship, but when he turned to look, there was nothing. The sensation, however, was unmistakable. They were not alone. I cannot say more, the alien woman whispered, her voice shaking with fear. They're coming. You have to leave. The elders are coming for you. For him. Captain March's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, and the crew behind her tensed, readying for combat. Michael felt his pulse race, but his mind was focused solely on the woman in front of him. Whatever she knew, whatever she had tried to warn them about, it was too late to turn back now. We're not leaving until we get some answers, March said, her voice filled with determination. The woman backed away, her hands raised in surrender. You do not understand. You are not safe. The prophecy is not just a story. It is a warning. Before Michael could ask any more questions, the ship's lights flickered violently. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The sound of something heavy shifting echoed through the walls. The elders had arrived. And with them, a terrifying truth was about to come to light. The tremors in the ship grew more pronounced, the once steady hum of its alien systems replaced by a low rumbling growl, as if the vessel itself were groaning under the weight of some immense, invisible pressure. Michael's pulse quickened, his instincts screaming that whatever was about to happen could be the end of everything. Captain March stepped forward, her hand on her weapon, her eyes scanning the walls, alert to every sound. What's going on? She demanded, her voice calm but urgent. The alien woman's face was pale, her silver hair cascading down her shoulders like strands of moonlight. She shook her head in desperation. They are here. The elders have come. Michael felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Who are the elders? He asked, his voice low, his gaze never leaving the woman in front of him. The ones who survived, she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and reverence. They are the ones who will determine your fate. They are the architects of the prophecy, the keepers of the past. And they will not forgive you. Forgive us? Michael repeated, growing more confused by the second. We didn't do anything. The woman's eyes flickered, a mixture of sorrow and disbelief. You do not remember. But they do. Suddenly the ship's systems hissed, and the lights dimmed further, leaving them in a dim, flickering half-darkness. The air was growing colder, and a strange electric charge crackled in the atmosphere, making the hairs on the back of Michael's neck stand on end. In the distance, he could hear a low, growling hum, a sound that seemed to reverberate from the very heart of the alien ship. They're here, the alien woman whispered, her voice barely audible above the rising noise. She turned to Captain March, her expression filled with both dread and resignation. You must leave. You cannot stay here. They will not allow you to. Captain March's hand tightened around the grip of her weapon, her expression steely. We're not going anywhere until we understand what's going on. The air around them thickened with tension as the ship's hum grew louder, the walls seeming to vibrate with an energy that resonated through their bones. Michael's pulse raced, and he instinctively stepped closer to the group, his hand hovering near the sidearm he always carried. The crew behind him looked equally on edge, their eyes flicking between the alien woman and the shifting shadows in the hall. Suddenly, the room before them seemed to warp, as if the very fabric of reality were bending. The air shimmered with unnatural energy, and a wave of intense heat blasted through the corridor. Michael had to squint against the blinding light that suddenly flooded the area, the temperature rising to unbearable levels in an instant. Then, in the midst of the chaos, a shape began to materialize. At first, it was nothing more than a faint outline, a blur of movement that seemed to distort the space around it. But then it became clearer. A figure, towering and imposing, stepped from the distorted air, the light shimmering around them like a force field. It was an elder. Michael's breath caught in his throat as he gazed upon the being before him. The elder was enormous, at least 8 feet tall, with a smooth, translucent skin that glowed faintly, radiating an eerie light. Its face was a mask of rigid, angular features, almost insect-like, with eyes that were large and black, devoid of any warmth or empathy. The being's body seemed to shimmer, as though it were partially made of light itself, its form constantly shifting in an almost liquid manner. The air around the elder pulsed with an oppressive force, and Michael felt a deep sense of unease settle in his chest. The creature was terrifying, not just in its appearance but in the overwhelming presence it exuded. He couldn't help but feel like he was in the presence of something ancient and powerful, something that could easily crush him without a second thought. The other elders began to materialize, emerging from the same warping light, their forms just as imposing, just as unsettling. They encircled the crew, their eyes fixed upon Michael with a cold, almost predatory gaze. The alien woman cowered in the corner, her expression a mixture of terror and submission. One of the elders stepped forward, its voice a deep, resonant hum that reverberated through Michael's entire body. "Human, you have arrived." Michael couldn't help but feel a shiver run down his spine at the sound of its voice. It wasn't just the words, it was the tone, the power behind them. It was as though the very air bent to the elder's will. "I am not here to fight," Michael said, his voice steady despite the fear that coiled in his gut. "I just want to know what's going on. We didn't start any war." The elder's eyes flicked to the alien woman, who now knelt on the floor, trembling. The elder's gaze lingered on her for a long moment before returning to Michael. "The child speaks the truth," the elder said, its voice like a low rumble. "But you do not remember, do you?" Michael shook his head, his frustration mounting. "I don't remember what? What happened?" The elder's eyes narrowed, its body glowing brighter, more intense. "You are the last of your kind, human. You are the last of the original humans. The ones who ravaged our world, destroyed our civilization and left us to die. It is you who were chosen to either end what your ancestors began or redeem the legacy of your people." "Wait, what do you mean original humans?" Michael asked, his voice rising with confusion. "I'm just a regular soldier. I don't know anything about this." Another elder stepped forward, its voice even colder than the first. "The original humans came long before you. Their empire spanned the stars. They sought to control everything. They found us, your ancestors found us, on our homeworld, and they slaughtered us in the name of conquest. Our people were nearly wiped out. You are the last generation of their kind." Michael's mind raced. He had no memory of any war, any ancient human empire. He was just a man from Earth, a soldier in the service of a future that had long moved past such conflicts. But these beings, these elders, seemed certain. They believed him to be something he wasn't, something he couldn't understand. "Why me?" Michael demanded, his voice desperate. "Why do you think I'm the one? I'm not like them." The elder regarded him with something that could almost be pity. "You carry the blood of your ancestors within you. You are not like them in body but in spirit. You are the heir to their legacy." "Then I'm nothing like them," Michael snapped, his anger rising. "I've never even heard of your species, never had anything to do with your war. I'm just here to make sure humanity doesn't repeat the same mistakes." The elder tilted its head, almost considering his words. "Perhaps. But your presence here is no accident. The prophecy has been set in motion. And the fate of our people and yours lies in your hands." The alien woman, still crouched in the corner, whispered hoarsely, "You must decide, human. The elders will not let you leave unless you choose." Michael's heart raced as the weight of the moment settled in. His mind was spinning, overwhelmed by the implications of the elder's words. He had no idea what he was supposed to do or how to undo the centuries of destruction his distant ancestors had wrought. The fate of 2 civilizations was now in his hands, and he had no idea how to save either. The room was silent, save for the soft hum of the elders, their presence overwhelming, their gaze unyielding. Michael stood at the center, surrounded by beings who were more ancient and powerful than anything he could have ever imagined. The cold, sterile walls of the alien vessel seemed to close in around him, a stark contrast to the searing weight of their words. The alien woman, trembling in the corner, glanced nervously at the elders before her gaze flicked back to Michael. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She seemed to know more about the situation than she had let on, but fear kept her silent. The other crew members stood in tight formation, weapons raised but not fired, unsure whether the danger they faced was one that could be fought. Michael could feel his heart pounding, every beat like a drum in his chest. The elders' words had left him reeling. He had no answers, no understanding of what they wanted from him, and no clue how to stop this spiral into chaos. They claimed his ancestors were responsible for the destruction of their civilization, and that he of all people, was now the one who would either finish what had been started or change the course of history. The weight of their expectations bore down on him. The entire fate of the two civilizations, human and alien, rested on his next move. He had no idea where to even begin. He was a soldier, not a historian, certainly not a savior. He didn't know if he was capable of undoing the sins of his forefathers, or if he could prevent another war. But one thing was clear, the decision wasn't his alone. The elders had given him no room to hesitate. The elder who had spoken before, towering and glowing, took another step forward, his form shifting like liquid fire, its voice low and rumbling. The time has come, human. You are the last of your kind. The prophecy speaks of the one who will destroy us or allow us to rebuild. The power to choose is yours. Choose what? Michael's voice cracked slightly, the frustration rising. He was past his breaking point, his nerves fraying at the edges. How can I make this choice? I don't even know what you're asking me to do. The elder's dark eyes fixed on him, piercing through him like a blade. The path you take will determine our future. Do you wish to make amends for your people's crimes and redeem what was lost? Or do you wish to destroy us and allow your species to begin anew, free of the stain of the past? Michael looked at the other elders, then back at the alien woman. There was something in her eyes now, something more than just fear. It was a kind of desperation. She was pleading with him, even if silently. He understood that she wasn't simply asking for his mercy, she was asking for his help. Help us, she whispered. Please? The words stung as if she had known all along that he was the one who could end this, the one who could either condemn or save them all. But how could he help them when he didn't even understand the full extent of what had happened? How could he make a choice when the history of two species was now tied to his single action? Captain March, who had been silent through most of the exchange, stepped forward. Her voice was firm, her posture resolute. Michael, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to stay focused. The elders may be powerful, but they don't have all the answers. We still have a say in this. And we're not alone in this galaxy. You don't have to make this decision alone. Michael turned toward her, his eyes searching hers. She was right. He couldn't make this decision based on the words of these ancient beings alone. There had to be another way. But what was it? He had seen nothing in their history to suggest that humanity's ancestors had ever meant to destroy the alien race. Had the elders exaggerated the truth? Or was there something far darker, some terrible betrayal in humanity's past that had been erased from the history books? He turned back to the elders, his mind working frantically to connect the dots. What if I don't choose either option? He asked, his voice rising slightly. What if I choose a third path, one where neither of us has to destroy the other? What if we find a way to coexist? The lead elder's eyes narrowed, and its form seemed to pulse with a strange, almost predatory energy. The prophecy does not allow for such a path. It is one of two outcomes, salvation or annihilation. We have waited too long for this moment. It cannot be denied. Michael's chest tightened. So that's it? You're forcing me to choose between wiping you out or letting you rebuild. And you think that's all I can do? The elder was silent for a long moment, and for the first time, Michael saw something like doubt flicker in its dark eyes. It opened its mouth to speak, but then another voice rang out from behind them, piercing the tension like a bolt of lightning. That's not true. It was the alien woman. She had risen to her feet, and despite her trembling hands, there was a fierce light in her eyes. She stepped forward, slowly but with purpose, until she was standing just a few feet from Michael. Her voice was steady, but her words carried the weight of ages. The prophecy is not the end of us, she said, her gaze shifting to the elders. The choice is not between destruction or salvation. It was never meant to be. Her eyes locked with Michael's. The prophecy is a myth, a tool used to control us, to make us believe that we have no hope beyond our past. We can coexist. But we have to believe that there is a future for both our people. The lead elder's gaze snapped to her, his form surging with an unnatural power. You speak of hope, child? You know nothing of what you are talking about. Your kind nearly destroyed us, and now you come to us with promises of peace? Your words mean nothing. The woman didn't flinch. I do know. I was born from the survivors of the war, raised in the shadows of what was lost. But I know that there is more to our people than just pain and hatred. There is potential for redemption. Michael took a deep breath. This was it. This was the opening he had been searching for. His instincts had been telling him that there was more to this story than the elders let on. He didn't have all the answers yet, but maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to choose between the extremes they had presented. Perhaps there was a third path, one that hadn't been considered, one that could bring both species to a new beginning. He turned to the elders, his voice steady but filled with newfound resolve. What if I told you that humanity's past doesn't have to define our future? What if we could break the cycle and build something better? It won't be easy, but we can choose to move forward. Together. For a moment, the elders were silent, their forms flickering in the dim light of the alien ship. The tension was thick, and Michael couldn't tell if they would accept his plea, or if they would reject it completely. But he could feel something shifting in the air, something that hadn't been there before. And then the lead elder spoke. Perhaps, there is another way. The words of the elder lingered in the air, a heavy pause following its unexpected statement. Michael stood motionless, his breath barely audible, as if the very atmosphere of the room had changed. The elders, their towering figures imposing and glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy, exchanged glances that seemed to convey more than words could. The alien woman, still standing beside Michael, cautiously shifted closer, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Captain March, ever the pragmatist, kept her eyes fixed on the elders, her posture tense but not hostile. The crew members were alert, watching closely, uncertain of what was to come. The lead elder spoke again, this time more slowly, its voice carrying the weight of centuries of wisdom and pain. You speak of a future human. A future where both our species can survive, together. But we have seen the remnants of your past. We have seen your kind's capacity for destruction. Michael felt his heart tighten, but he stood firm, his voice resolute. I can't deny the mistakes of humanity's past. But we're not the same as we once were. The people I serve, the people I fight for, they've learned from those mistakes. We want peace, not war. We want a future, not a legacy of death. The elder seemed to consider this, its dark eyes narrowing as it studied Michael, then glanced briefly at the others around him. The light in the room seemed to dim further, as if the elder was pondering something vast and incomprehensible. Then, without warning, the elder's form shimmered slightly, its body growing less rigid, its tone softening. Perhaps, you are different. Perhaps there is truth in your words. But it is not just your people who must change. It is ours as well. The shift in the elder's demeanor was striking. Michael had expected resistance, hostility, perhaps even a further attempt at asserting dominance, but this was something else entirely. The elders had been steadfast in their belief in the prophecy, but now they were questioning it. The alien woman stepped forward, her voice quieter now, but full of the kind of conviction that only someone who had lived through years of suffering could possess. We've been living in the shadows for so long, hiding from what was lost. We've believed that the prophecy was our destiny, our only path forward. But what if the prophecy was meant to test us? To see if we were capable of forgiveness, of change? One of the other elders, smaller in stature but no less formidable, made a sound like a deep, resonant hum. It sounded almost like a sigh, but the reverberations were filled with an ancient sadness. Forgiveness, change. These are words we have not heard for millennia. We believed the cycle could never be broken. Michael took a step closer to the alien woman, his hand hovering just above her shoulder in an unspoken gesture of solidarity. No one can undo the past, but we don't have to let it dictate our future. We can choose differently for both of our peoples. Captain March shifted, stepping up beside him. You talk about peace. But peace doesn't just happen. It has to be worked for. It means cooperation, compromise, trust. If we're going to break this cycle, we need to start by understanding each other, not by letting ancient grudges dictate our every action. The lead elder's glowing form seemed to pulse with energy, its massive presence almost suffocating in the tense silence. Finally, it spoke again, its voice quieter but no less intense. You ask much, human. For us to abandon everything we have known, everything that has sustained us through the darkest of times. It is not a small request. Michael looked directly into the elder's unblinking eyes, trying to convey the urgency in his voice. Then let me show you. Let me prove that humanity is more than its past. We can find a way forward, together. For several long moments the room was silent. The elders did not move, their forms frozen as they seemed to deliberate among themselves. Michael could feel the weight of their judgment bearing down on him. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. The alien woman beside him held her breath, her eyes fixed on the lead elder, waiting for a decision that could either doom them all or open a path to something new. Finally, the lead elder spoke, its voice tinged with something that could almost be called resolve. You speak of trust, of cooperation. And yet, you have come to our home, uninvited, carrying with you the legacy of destruction. How can we trust that you will not repeat the mistakes of your forebears? Michael's voice was steady, his resolve unwavering. You're right to question me. But my people have already learned the cost of war. I've seen it myself. The destruction, the devastation. We're not the same as we were, not after everything we've seen, everything we've lost. We want something better. And we're willing to fight for it together. The elder's form shimmered again, this time less like liquid fire and more like a still, controlled force. Its voice softened even further, as though it were struggling to reconcile its past with the possibility of a future it had long considered impossible. You say you are willing to fight for this future. What does that mean for us? What do you ask of us, human? What will we have to sacrifice to create this new beginning? Michael's mind raced. The question was not one he had expected, but it was one he knew was coming. Every path forward, every new beginning, would require something from both sides, something beyond the abstract promises of peace and understanding. He turned to the alien woman, whose eyes were filled with both hope and fear. She was the key. Her people were survivors, yes, but they had been broken, divided, scattered by their past. Michael realized that their salvation, their future, depended on something even more profound than just human effort. It would require the strength of both species to move past their histories. Turning back to the elders, he spoke carefully. You will have to trust us. Trust that we are not our ancestors. Trust that we want peace just as much as you do. And we will help you rebuild, not just your home but your civilization, your unity. We will share what we've learned, what we've lost, and build something stronger together. But we need you to trust us. The elder remained still, considering his words. Trust, it repeated, the word heavy on its tongue. That is a great demand. But perhaps it is the only way forward. Another elder, one who had remained silent throughout most of the exchange, finally spoke. You speak of change. But change comes at a cost. Our people have been broken for too long. Our unity is fragile, and we cannot afford to allow it to be shattered once more. Michael nodded, understanding the depth of what they were asking. We'll stand by you. Together we can rebuild. Together we can forge a future that is not defined by the scars of the past. But it will require both of us. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. The lead elder paused, and for a moment, Michael thought he saw something in its expression. A flicker of doubt, perhaps, or something more akin to hope. Finally the elder spoke, its voice steady and resolute. Then it is agreed. We will trust you, human. We will move forward. But know this, the future you speak of will not come easily. The scars of the past are deep, and the road ahead will be fraught with challenges. But we will walk it with you. Michael's breath escaped in a quiet sigh of relief. He turned to Captain March, her expression unreadable but her stance softened. The crew members relaxed slightly, but the weight of the moment still hung heavily in the air. The path forward would be difficult, but for the first time since their arrival, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. The two species, so different, so scarred by their histories, might just have a chance to rebuild. Together. And it all began with one choice. The atmosphere aboard the alien vessel was charged with a strange, electric energy. Michael stood alongside the alien woman, who had yet to introduce herself fully, her gaze fixed on the elders. The crew members had moved closer, cautiously watching the scene unfold, but there was a sense of relief in the air. The tension that had threatened to tear the room apart had dissipated, leaving behind something more fragile but perhaps far more important: hope. The lead elder, its towering figure still pulsing with otherworldly energy, turned its gaze to the others, its voice steady but carrying the weight of its decision. The path forward will be long. There is much that must be done. The trust we have placed in you, human, is not without consequence. Your people will not be given this opportunity again. Michael's heart pounded in his chest. This was no empty promise. The elders had agreed to cooperate, but their trust would be tested. He would have to prove to them and to his own people that this fragile alliance could work. If there was one thing he had learned over the years, it was that nothing worth having came without cost. But he wasn't alone in this, and that thought brought him some measure of comfort. Understood, Michael replied, his voice firm. We won't let you down. The alien woman, whose name Michael had learned was Elira, finally spoke, her voice soft but unwavering. The future you speak of, I can help you. My people are broken, but they are not lost. The destruction of our world was not only a consequence of war, it was the result of our own refusal to change. But we can change. If you're willing to help us. Elira's words were heavy with the kind of truth that only a survivor could speak. She was a product of the war, her life shaped by the collapse of her civilization, by the trauma and loss that her people had endured for generations. Michael understood her better than anyone else in the room, for he too had been shaped by the scars of a past that wasn't his own. But unlike her, he had never been forced to bear the weight of an entire species' destruction. What do we need to do? Captain March asked, her voice cutting through the silence. This isn't going to be easy and we don't have much time. We're already on borrowed time as it is. The lead elder fixed its glowing eyes on her, acknowledging the truth in her words. The decision has been made. But the path is not without obstacles. The war was only the beginning. We must rebuild our cities, restore our technology, and most importantly, rebuild our trust. The scars of the past are deep, and many of our people will resist this change. Michael nodded, turning toward Elira. You've seen the damage firsthand. What can we do to help rebuild? Elira's gaze softened for a moment, and she glanced at the crew. The first step will be to reunite the scattered survivors. Many of my people have lived in isolation, hiding in small colonies, afraid of the conflict that tore our civilization apart. They have no reason to believe that we can recover, that we can move forward without repeating the mistakes of the past. Michael exchanged a glance with Captain March. The task ahead seemed impossible. How could they convince entire populations to come together after everything they had been through? The wounds ran deep, and many of the aliens would surely question the motives of the humans. It would take more than promises. It would take action. We have resources, Captain March said, a note of determination in her voice. We have ships, supplies, and technology. If we can start small, just enough to show them that this alliance is real, we can begin to build trust. Elira nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both hope and wariness. It is a start. But we will need more than just supplies. We will need to show them that we are serious, that humanity is willing to sacrifice, to be a part of something bigger than itself. We must lead by example. The thought of leading by example was a daunting one. Michael had been trained for battle, for leadership in times of war. But this was something different. He was being asked to help heal a broken civilization, to guide both his people and the alien race toward a future where cooperation, not conflict, was the rule. He looked out at the crew, his comrades in arms. This won't be easy, but it's the only way. We'll start with what we have. We'll build trust one step at a time. It's going to take time and it's going to take everything we have. But if we want this to work, we'll need to move forward together. Both our people. The crew seemed to agree, their faces showing the same determination that Michael felt in his bones. They were soldiers, yes, but they were also human. And humanity, in all its flaws, had a capacity for change that even the elders had underestimated. They had a chance now, an opportunity to be more than just conquerors of a distant world, but partners in a shared future. The elders, watching the exchange, seemed to consider Michael's words carefully. You ask much of us, human, the lead elder said. But we will help you. We will help rebuild. It is not enough to repair the damage done, but we will start. We will call our people together, and we will show them that this is not just a war-weary peace. This is a new beginning. Elira stepped forward again, her voice filled with quiet resolve. We will begin by restoring our cities, those that still stand. We will reach out to the scattered colonies, bring them into the fold. We will need your help, human, for this. We will need your people to provide the means, the expertise. But above all, we will need your trust. Michael took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the responsibility settle over him like a mantle. There was no going back now. They had made a promise and they would see it through. The future of two species rested in their hands. Then we'll start, Michael said, his voice steady. We'll bring the resources. We'll provide the manpower. But more than that, we'll bring the example. We'll show you that we're serious. This won't be easy, but we'll walk this road together. The elders nodded, their forms shimmering with an ancient understanding. It begins now, the lead elder said, its voice a low rumble. The future will not be easy, but it will be ours to build. As the words echoed through the chamber, Michael felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of hope surge through him. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges, but it was a road they would walk together. For the first time since this journey had begun, Michael saw a future not defined by war, but by the possibility of something better. And that, he realized, was worth fighting for. And so, the work began. The first steps were the hardest, gathering the scattered survivors of the alien race, rebuilding the cities, forging fragile bonds of trust between humans and aliens. But with every challenge faced, with every small success, the path forward became clearer. The elders were cautious but willing. Elira proved to be a bridge between the two species, helping to guide the rebuilding efforts and showing her people that change was possible. It was slow, painstaking work. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But as the months passed, the first signs of progress appeared. New settlements were formed, cooperation blossomed, and the once ravaged alien world began to show signs of life. And in the distance, Michael could almost see the glimmer of a new dawn, a future where both species could thrive side by side. Together. The early days of the reconstruction were grueling. The scars left on the alien planet were deep, and the people, both human and alien, felt the weight of the task ahead. Michael had watched as the crew worked tirelessly, repairing broken structures, building new foundations and facilitating communication between the scattered colonies of the alien race. Every day was a struggle, but there were victories too, no matter how small. The first signs of cooperation between the two species began to emerge, and with it, a slow but steady glimmer of hope. Michael had been busy overseeing the human effort, but there were moments, quiet moments, when he allowed himself to reflect on how far they had come. It had only been a few months since the elders had agreed to place their trust in humanity, and yet the world around him had already changed. The air was no longer thick with tension. Instead, there was a new energy, a cautious optimism. It was fragile, but it was there. One of those quiet moments came when he was standing at the edge of a newly rebuilt city, watching the sun rise over the horizon. The alien structures were tall, imposing, and beautifully alien in their design, but there was something distinctly human about the way they had begun to blend with the new additions, human-made buildings and technologies, carefully integrated into the alien environment. The fusion of the two races' creations was a symbol of the cooperation that had begun, a promise of a future that neither side had thought possible just a short time ago. Behind him, Elira approached, her graceful figure moving with a quiet purpose. She had become a key figure in the efforts to unite their people, acting as a mediator between the humans and the scattered colonies of her kind. Michael had watched her grow into the role, her courage and leadership shining through even in the darkest moments. It was clear that she had inherited the strength of her people, and yet she carried with her a quiet humility that made her an even more powerful leader. "I was just thinking about how far we've come," Michael said as she stepped up beside him. His voice was low, thoughtful. "It's hard to believe that just a few months ago we were on the brink of war. And now, we're building something new." Elira nodded, her eyes reflecting the same sense of quiet satisfaction that Michael felt. "It's not perfect. There are still so many challenges ahead of us. There are people who don't believe in this, who think that we've made a mistake. But I see the change, Michael. I see it in the people. They're beginning to believe that this is possible, that we can have a future without war." Michael smiled, though it was tinged with the weight of the journey ahead. "We've all paid a heavy price for this. But I think we've learned something, about ourselves, about each other. And that's the first step. The rest will come, one day at a time." Elira's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the first light of dawn bathed the alien landscape in hues of gold and red. "I think the hardest part is yet to come. We've rebuilt cities, yes. But what we need now is to rebuild the trust between our people. The scars are deep. The hatred runs deep. We can't change everything overnight." Michael turned to her, his expression serious. "No. But we've started. That's the most important thing. You said it yourself. We need to show them that we can work together, that we can be stronger together. And if we keep moving forward, if we keep proving ourselves, I believe we can change their hearts too." There was a moment of silence as they both gazed out at the new dawn, a metaphor for the world they were trying to build. The alien planet was still scarred by the ruins of the past, but there was life too. Life that was slowly returning, both in the form of the rebuilding cities and in the renewed spirit of the people who called this world home. As if on cue, a small group of the elders appeared, their presence as imposing as ever. But there was something different in their demeanor now, an openness, a quiet curiosity that had not been there before. They had been watching the progress, taking careful note of the way the humans had interacted with the alien survivors, learning how to work together to blend cultures, technologies, and ways of life. For the first time, Michael sensed that they no longer saw humanity as a threat, but as something else entirely. Something they could learn from. One of the elders, the same one who had led the decision to trust humanity in the beginning, stepped forward. "Michael, Elira," it said, its voice deep and resonant. "We have observed the progress you have made. You have shown us that you are not the same as your ancestors. Your actions have spoken louder than your words. But we are still cautious. The future you speak of is one we have not known for millennia. It is unsettling. Michael nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the elder's words. I understand your caution. But we can't move forward if we're constantly looking over our shoulder at the past. I know what's been lost, what we've both lost. But the future doesn't have to be a repetition of that. It can be something different. The elder seemed to ponder this for a long moment before speaking again. You ask for trust, human. Trust is a fragile thing. It takes time to rebuild and even longer to earn. We will continue to observe. But know this, you have shown us a path forward. You have given us hope where we thought there was none. Elira stepped forward, her voice steady but full of emotion. We will walk that path with you. We will rebuild together not just the cities but our peoples. We have the strength to change. And if we can do it, then so can you. There was another pause, but this time it was filled with something else, something almost akin to agreement. The elder inclined its head, the faintest shimmer of light passing through its form, a sign of acknowledgement. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps this is the way forward. But remember, the road ahead will not be easy. There will be those who resist. There will be dangers both from within and without. We cannot forget that. Michael placed a hand on Elira's shoulder, offering her a reassuring smile. We won't forget. But we're ready. We're in this together. The elder seemed to study him for a moment, then turned to the other elders. A quiet conversation passed between them, their voices too low for Michael to hear. But when they turned back to him, there was a shift, a sense of quiet understanding that had not been there before. We will stand with you, the elder said finally, its voice carrying a new weight of resolve. We will stand with humanity. And together we will shape the future. As the words hung in the air, Michael felt the full weight of their meaning. This was no longer a simple alliance. It was a partnership, forged in the fire of war but tempered by the hope of a shared future. They had taken the first steps on a long and difficult road, but they were not alone. And as the sun rose higher, casting its light over the new world they were building together, Michael knew that this was only the beginning. The dawn had come. And with it, the promise of something better. The work was far from over. But they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Together. The work that followed the elders' solemn agreement was both exhilarating and exhausting. Michael and Elira stood at the forefront of the rebuilding efforts, leading joint human-alien teams as they constructed cities, roads, and technology that would allow their two species to thrive together. The once war-torn landscape was now dotted with new settlements, their sleek human architecture blending with the elegant alien structures. The fusion of technology and design was a testament to the hard work of both species, and it reflected the growing bond between them. Yet even as the cities grew, so did the cracks in the delicate alliance. It was a crisp evening when Michael first felt the weight of the rift between the human and alien factions. He had been busy overseeing the construction of a new research facility designed to merge human scientific knowledge with the advanced alien technologies that had once been a symbol of their power. Elira had joined him, her face lined with fatigue, but her expression still steadfast. The day had been long, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. That evening they were to meet with the elders to discuss the next phase of their plans for unification, an ambitious proposal to merge their militaries in an effort to safeguard their fragile peace from external threats. However, as they entered the council room, Michael could feel the tension in the air. The elders stood gathered in a semicircle, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. There was an unusual stillness about them, and for the first time since their agreement, Michael felt a deep unease. One of the elders, the same one who had first spoken in favor of the alliance, raised its elongated hand. Human Elira, it began, its voice low and grave. We have been watching your progress. There is much to commend in what you have done. But we have concerns. A new proposal has been brought before us by a faction within our people. They question your intentions. Michael stiffened. He exchanged a glance with Elira, whose eyes were narrowed with concern. What do you mean? Our intentions have been clear from the beginning. We came here to help rebuild, to work together for the future. The elder's voice grew more insistent. It is not your words, human, but your actions. The human factions are not as united as you claim. Some of your kind do not trust us, do not want this alliance. They believe we are too dangerous, too unpredictable. They fear that by helping us rebuild, you risk losing your humanity. The words cut through the air like a blade. Michael could feel his heart begin to race. He had known that there would be resistance, he had seen it from the beginning. But to hear that some humans were actively trying to sabotage the effort? That hit harder than he expected. Elira stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. We cannot let fear control us. The past has already shaped us, both of us. But we have the power to choose what we become. There are those who will always resist change no matter how much good it brings. But that cannot be the reason we stop moving forward. Another elder, one whose glowing eyes seemed colder than the others, spoke. You misunderstand, Elira. We do not question your motives. But the distrust among your people is a very real threat. There are those who would see this alliance as a weakness, as an invitation for us to dominate. We cannot allow our people to be swept away by such notions. Some of our kind feel that the humans will, in time, betray us. Michael felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The words were like an accusation. Betrayal, it was the word they had both feared from the very beginning. He had always known that there would be factions, that not all would be as committed to peace as he was. But hearing it stated so openly, coming from the elders themselves, left him shaken. And how do you suggest we handle this? Michael asked, his voice strained, trying to keep his emotions in check. The elder did not hesitate. We must take control of the situation before it escalates. We cannot allow these fears to fester, for if they do, the very foundations of our alliance will crumble. There must be a demonstration, something to prove that humanity will not betray us. Elira's brow furrowed. A demonstration? You want us to show you our loyalty by… What? What exactly are you asking for? The elder's gaze hardened. You will participate in a joint military exercise. A live demonstration of your trust. You will stand side by side in combat. And you will prove that you can fight as one. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Michael could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. A joint military exercise was something they had discussed in the past, something they had hoped to avoid for as long as possible. It was a powerful symbol, but one that also carried the risk of conflict. In times of such fragile peace, it could easily go wrong. The smallest misstep could shatter everything they had worked to build. Elira spoke first, her voice quiet but resolute. You're asking us to fight together in front of all those who doubt us. To prove that we can cooperate in the most extreme of circumstances? The elder nodded. Yes. It is the only way to silence the doubts among our people. If you fail to do so, it will only reaffirm their worst fears. Michael turned to Elira, his mind racing. The implications of the proposal were enormous. If they agreed, it could strengthen the alliance, but it also risked showing the cracks that still existed, the fractures between their people that had yet to heal. There was also the question of how the human factions would respond to being pushed into such a high-stakes situation. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they see it as a betrayal of their own ideals? Elira met his gaze, her expression unreadable. If we refuse, it could be worse. If we turn away now, we risk losing everything we've built. But if we accept, we have to be sure. Sure that we are ready to prove that this is more than just a fragile alliance. It is a new beginning. Michael nodded, his throat tight. Then we accept. We'll prove that we can fight together. The elder's eyes seemed to soften just for a moment. You will have our support. But know this, failure is not an option. The future of our people depends on this. As the elders dispersed, Michael felt a cold certainty settle in. They had agreed to the challenge, but the weight of their decision was heavier than he had anticipated. The future of the alliance, of both species, was now tied to the success of a joint military operation. One mistake, one misstep could unravel everything they had worked for. In the coming days, both human and alien forces would come together for the exercise. The pressure was immense, and Michael could feel the tension growing between the factions. The future of their world, their people, and their fragile peace rested in their hands. And he knew that this would be their greatest test yet. The days leading up to the joint military exercise were filled with a palpable tension. It wasn't just the uncertainty of the exercise itself, it was everything that hung in the balance. Michael and Elira worked together closely, trying to maintain unity among their people, but the cracks were showing. Among the humans, there were whispers of betrayal, of being led into something that might bring more harm than good. Among the aliens, there was an undercurrent of doubt, a sense that perhaps humanity wasn't to be trusted as fully as the elders had hoped. As the day of the exercise approached, Michael found himself standing before a map of the proposed battle area in one of the command tents. It was located in a valley, sparsely populated, ideal for a mock battle that would allow both sides to test their coordination and tactics without endangering the civilian populations. But it was also a site where they could easily be ambushed, and that uncertainty added to the pressure. Elira entered the tent, her presence calming yet determined. Her blue skin shimmered faintly in the light, a reminder of her alien nature. She had been the strongest ally in this entire endeavor, and Michael had come to rely on her in ways he hadn't expected. They both understood what was at stake. "We're ready," Michael said, his voice strained. "But I can feel the weight of this, Elira. I know the humans are uneasy and I can tell the aliens are too. It's not just about military strategy anymore. It's about trust. And right now, I'm not sure either side fully trusts the other." Elira crossed the room, placing her hand on the table. Her fingers were long and delicate, but when they pressed down, they seemed to pulse with the power of her people's ancient energy. "I know, Michael. But that's why this is necessary. This exercise will show everyone once and for all that we can fight together. That we can trust each other in the heat of battle. It's the only way to silence the fears that have been festering for too long." Michael nodded, though doubts still gnawed at him. He'd seen too many alliances crumble in the heat of battle, too many promises broken when the pressure was too high. But the alternative, refusing the exercise, was just as dangerous. It would send a message of weakness, of hesitation, and that could have catastrophic consequences for both their species. "I just hope we're ready for it," Michael said. "One mistake, one misstep, and this whole thing could unravel." Elira's gaze was unwavering. "We have no choice but to succeed. But I believe in you, Michael. You've already shown that you can lead, that you can unite people. We just need to prove it to the rest of the galaxy." As they prepared to leave the tent, Michael looked out at the horizon, his thoughts heavy with the weight of the decision. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and purple, a stark reminder that the future was not set in stone. The exercise, though intended as a demonstration of unity, could very well be the moment where everything fell apart. The next morning the troops gathered. On the human side there was a mix of veterans and recruits, all of them uneasy but determined. They were led by Captain March, who stood at the forefront, her gaze sharp and focused. She had been one of the earliest supporters of the alliance, but even she couldn't ignore the skepticism that had been growing in recent weeks. The tension between the factions had escalated, and there were murmurs among the human ranks that some felt this exercise was a step too far. On the alien side the warriors were formidable, tall, lean, and exuding an ancient, almost mystical power. They moved with the precision of a race that had fought countless battles, but there was also hesitation in their movements. The elders had warned them about the danger of trusting humans too much, and though Elira had done her best to quell their fears, the doubts remained. As the forces took their positions on the field, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the stakes were higher than anyone was admitting. This wasn't just a test of military skill, it was a test of character. The outcome would determine whether humanity and the alien race could coexist peacefully or whether they would be doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. The signal was given and the exercise began. The first few hours were spent in tense maneuvers, both sides testing each other's strengths and weaknesses, pushing the limits of their cooperation. There were moments of success, when human and alien forces worked in unison, coordinating attacks, creating a rhythm that was nearly flawless. But then there were moments of chaos, miscommunications, misfires, small errors that threatened to snowball into larger issues. At one point, an alien unit, under the command of a high-ranking officer, misinterpreted a human maneuver and nearly launched a counterattack that could have ended the exercise in disaster. Michael was there, leading the humans on the ground, and he saw the hesitation in the alien officer's eyes as it realized the mistake. For a long moment no one moved, until Michael stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the battlefield. "No. Hold position," he shouted. "We're still in control. Don't panic." His words cut through the tension, and slowly the alien forces began to fall back into formation. Elira, who had been observing from a distant command post, looked to the humans with a mixture of pride and concern. The situation had nearly spiraled out of control, but Michael's leadership had averted a disaster. Despite the danger of the situation, the humans and aliens managed to regain their composure. For the next few hours they fought as one, overcoming their fears and doubts. The battle had become less about strategy and more about proving something fundamental: their ability to trust each other. As the exercise finally drew to a close, both sides stood at a stalemate, exhausted but resolute. The battlefield was littered with the remains of the mock conflict: broken equipment, scorched earth, and the faint smell of smoke. But the outcome was clear: they had survived the exercise, and more importantly, they had proven that they could fight side by side. Back at the command tent, the mood was tense, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the air. The humans and aliens gathered, some weary, others bruised, but all with the same underlying thought, that they had made it through. The elders approached Michael and Elira, their eyes glowing faintly as they surveyed the battlefield. The lead elder spoke first, its voice heavy with authority. "You have shown us much, human," it said. You have proven that, despite your differences, you can work together. This exercise was not merely a demonstration of your military strength, it was a demonstration of something deeper, something more important. It was a demonstration of trust. Elira stepped forward, her voice quiet but filled with emotion. We fought together. We overcame our doubts and our fears. We've shown that our future isn't about what's been lost, it's about what we can still build. The elder nodded, its glowing eyes dimming as it considered their words. This was a difficult test. But you have passed it. And for that we are grateful. Michael's shoulders eased slightly, the weight of the moment finally starting to lift. They had done it. The alliance had survived, and in that moment he realized that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more trials to face, but they had taken the first steps toward a future together. The road ahead was long, but now, more than ever, Michael believed they could walk it, not as humans and aliens but as allies, united by trust and the promise of something greater. The dawn of a new era was here. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.